Today I'd like to talk about another contentious issue with regards to Israel and the current situation in Palestine and Gaza Strip and the West Bank. We are being told repeatedly by the Zionist lobby that Israel has a right to exist and they must therefore defend themselves for this right. The fact is that there is no right for a country to exist. Before World War I, countries claimed the land through conquest. The strongest survived and the weakest disappeared. That's the story of colonization all over the world, from India to Africa, to West Indies, USA, Australia, New Zealand, and many others. Aboriginals, native Indians, and the native Africans and American Indians were not considered to have a right to the land they occupied for centuries. And in the case of the Australian Aboriginals, for over 60,000 years. But all this was supposed to have stopped after World War I, with the formation of the League of Nations, soon to become the United Nations. At that time, all the major powers and countries agreed to respect the status quo and the existing boundaries of the countries that existed. Of course, there were breaches of this off and on, and mainly by the very same big nations with large armies. But by and large, national boundaries were respected, and the world would, with one voice, condemn any arbitrary annexation of another people's land. But something very strange occurred in the Middle East. In the aftermath of World War I, the victors, that is England and France mainly, took control of the majority of what was the Ottoman Empire, with the blessings of the newly formed League of Nations. Many so-called mandates were established as a result, such as the mandate for Syria and Lebanon, Transjordan, the mandate for Palestine, and the mandate for Iraq, and various mandates in Africa. Now, mandates were not considered the same as colonization. At least that was not its intent. Under Article 22 of the Covenant of the League of Nations, mandates had two primarily governing principles. The first was non-annexation, that is, the land was to remain the property of the inhabitants. And two, the administration of that land was to occur as a sacred trust of civilization, that is, it was to be developed for the benefit of the native people of the land. The country that held the mandate did not own the land. They were there to develop the country for the benefit of the inhabitants. But as I said, a strange but predictable thing occurred with respect to the Middle East, and in other ways to other mandates. Britain, in particular, who held the mandate for Palestine, promised the land of Palestine to two individual groups simultaneously. Firstly, in 1915, it was promised to the Sharif of Mecca, Hussein, in exchange for his help in destabilizing the Ottoman Empire through civil war, which he did, and which played a big part in the Second World War's eventual victory of the Western powers. Secondly, in 1917, Palestine was offered to the Young Zionist organization founded by Theodor Herzl, in exchange for financial backing and influence. Now remember that as the holder of the mandate, Britain had no legal right to offer the land to anyone, since it was not theirs to give. Especially, it was clearly wrong to give it to a foreigner when it was to be developed for the Palestinian people. So to get back to my main point, the establishment and recognition of a country is not a right. Since the establishment of the League of Nations, there were clear boundaries for each nation. To drive home the point even clearer, let's take the case of Taiwan, formerly known as the Republic of China. Taiwan has been settled for more than 20,000 years, but large-scale immigration from China occurred in the 17th century. It was eventually annexed by Japan and then by the Republic of China in 1912. So it became a part of the Republic of China, who was governed in mainland China as well as essentially what is now Taiwan. When Mao Zedong took control of mainland China in 1949, the leaders of the Republic of China, who did not want to be a part of the new communist regime, migrated to Taiwan. Now, the Republic of China was a founding member of the United Nations and held a permanent seat. So it was a recognized entity. But with the rise of the Republic of China under Mao Zedong, and by increasing pressure, the Republic of China was actually kicked out of the United Nations and replaced by the now People's Republic of China. So the situation since then is that Taiwan, or Republic of China as it is known, is no longer an actual recognized country by many world powers, although by all standards it remains a first world country with first world economics. So here we have a situation where a country was not only recognized, but was a founding member of the United Nations and remained a member and a recognized country until 1971, and then it was suddenly derecognized. So as you can see, being a nation or country is not a right. It does not come about merely because you want it to. It requires the consensus of the rest of the world. Another significant point in the Israel issue, and why Israel certainly does not have a right to exist, is that when all the turmoil over Palestine was occurring, the only solution that was acceptable to most nations, including Israel and Palestine, was the formation of a two-state solution, one of Israel and one of Palestine. The obvious sticking points was the specific boundaries. But of course, with the behind the scenes and intense wheeling and dealing by the Zionists, suddenly the state of Israel was recognized, even against the objections of the Palestinians who did not agree with the suggested boundaries. Now, how can you create one state if a two-state solution is the aim? How do you think the other side, who was not recognized, would react? Especially when this side that was left out were in fact the majority of the population and the initial occupiers of the land. Even so, Israel from that time on has followed definite policies to prevent the recognition of a Palestinian state ever becoming real. And one only has to listen to statements by the current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, where he states that a Palestinian state will never happen. And they are taking steps to prevent this by encouraging illegal settlements in the West Bank and drawing up plans in union and in conjunction and backed by the USA and its crony states, I would say, not really allies, to redevelop Gaza to the exclusion of the Gazan population, and to make it into some sort of Middle Eastern Riviera for the rich and famous to buy, and not for the regular Gazan people. So it is ridiculous to say that any people have a right to have a place for themselves, a nation. At least of all, the Zionists who have deliberately flooded into the area of Palestine, have refused to coexist with the native population, and want to be the only recognized nation in the region to the exclusion of Palestinians.